to the July edition of the Hasura Community Call. I'm Vish and I'm your host. If this is your first time participating in the Hasura Community Call, let me tell you a bit about it. So, we've been doing these monthly events since 2019 to share what we're working on with the community, starting off with a brief overview by Tanmai Gopal, our CEO and co founder, of the product roadmap, followed by our product and engineering teams showcasing the features that we're working on, or sharing RFCs, or answering the questions by the community. Now, this time around, we decided to change this format slightly, just slightly, but in a good way, so that we could fit in and make room for not just the features that we're working on, but also the features that have just landed. So what this means is that you can try out the new features that we announced at a community call right after the community call, and you can also ask any questions that you might have about the features directly to the people who have worked on these features from our engineering and product teams. Awesome. So let's take a quick look at the agenda, and we're super excited to introduce a few really cool features. We'll start off, as I mentioned earlier, by a quick Hasura update by Tanmai, followed by a few product updates and live demos by our engineering team. And we also have, each month we have a community demo by a guest presenter from the community. So this month we have Nick with us, who will be talking about how they built and are now using a GitHub action called Hasura Change Summary at Field Guide that lets you review Hasura metadata changes efficiently. So I'm super excited about that. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Tanmay, if you're ready.
Thank you, Vish. Hello, everybody. And let me just quickly share my screen. Cool. So I'll step through a few quick updates. I'll break this up into three sections. The first things that we've recently released and that you can start trying out. Updates on some of the big things that we've been working on that you folks might be aware of. And I'll catch everybody up on where we are and how things are going. And some new things that we're working on, for which we'll be having RFCs open soon, and to give you a sense of kind of some of those things that are about to kind of get started. Recently released, we have BigQuery, which is now available on Hasura Cloud, Hasura Open Source, Hasura Enterprise as well. This is our first OLAP database, so it's a big moment for us. It was very interesting working on BigQuery because we did a data loader kind of approach first, and then we switched that back to we were able to kind of get a JSON aggregation approach with a predicate pushdown, which is what we do with Postgres as well, working on BigQuery, and the performance there is chef's kiss. So it's I have to do. We'll be publishing some benchmarks there and kind of talking about OLAP databases and query generation for OLAP systems. So this is very exciting for us. We're already seeing a few use cases in production. So this is absolutely amazing. If you folks have BigQuery datasets that you're trying things out with, please do try it out. Let us know how it goes, and the initial setup should work really well. With BigQuery, our plan is so far to support read-only workloads. We might do writes later, but for now it's read-only. Second, in improving our support for more databases in the Postgres family, we have Timescale and of course the Aurora and RDS and Managed DBAS, Managed Postgres family, and Yugabyte as well. And now we've added support for Citus/Hyperscale. This is a shardable kind of scale out Postgres. You set up a sharding column, and then you can start scaling out or partitioning data across different Postgres nodes, and Citus federates that query out to those different nodes. And this works really well for workloads where you have certain data models where the data is kind of expanding or growing very rapidly. You want to do sub-second queries, sub-second analytical queries, sub-second hybrid queries to fetch that information. So this is also live. Do try it out. This supports almost all of our features that we support on Postgres as well. And especially with Hasura 2.0 and with the ability to join across databases, it's a really nice way to also kind of take certain models that you might have in Postgres where the workload is getting a little bit too, let's say, for example, that table is scaling out too quickly, right? And it's not even working with, say, Postgres partitions. You can now kind of move that particular model to Citus. So for example, you have a messages table and in your chat application, right, that can move to Citus, or you have an events table that is ingesting events. You can start moving that to just Citus or Hyperscale, but keep the rest of your data model in Postgres as well. We'll be doing we'll be doing a reference article on setting up a chat kind of application that's scaled out, along with some subscriptions enhancements also that we're working on. So that's going to be a nice way to kind of check out a thing like Citus/Hyperscale in action. The third, which has been, I think, one of our most upvoted, requested issues on GitHub, computed field enhancements. This covers 4 enhancements that Vamshi will be talking about later today. These include the ability to use computed fields in filtering, sorting, in the GraphQL API itself, and of course in permissions, and then the third, which is in remote joins as well. So if you want to set up a remote join from a data model to a remote schema, you can now use computed fields there as well, especially if there's a transformation required before you can join. So Vamshi will be talking a little more about that. We landed some nice GraphQL security features on Hasura Cloud, which I think Thiru will be taking us over later today. And so we'll check those out as well. Similarly, we've also landed query tags, which annotates underlying queries that are going to the database with GraphQL operation names or request IDs, so that you get kind of better end-to-end tracing. Especially if you're looking at database monitoring tools, you're going to be able to see, where is this load coming from, or how is this particular operation performing over time, and that becomes really helpful for thinking about, how you want to scale out how you want to scale your database out, how you want to size it, you want to move models over to different databases, right? Stuff like that. The 6th and the 7th, which we talked a little bit about last month, the GitHub integration feature and the template gallery. I think this is just being toggled on now for all of the folks who requested early access, along with a guide to help you kind of understand how the entire GitHub integration piece works, what to do if you have faulty migrations, or you have faulty metadata, how to roll back, how to recover, and stuff like that. And then of course template gallery, and both of these also will be doing a quick demo of later today. So that's the stuff that's out. If you create a new project on Hasura Cloud, you should be able to see it, and we'll be rolling these out gradually across all existing Hasura Cloud projects automatically as well over the next few days. And of course, if you have a Hasura instance running locally, just feel free to fire it up and you'll see these. All right, next on the stuff that we have, that we've been working on, that are in progress, we have inherited roles, which these are some of the things that we were hoping to land this month, but it's gotten pushed out a little bit. But you should see work on these pretty quickly over the next few days and weeks. Inherited roles, which Karthikeyan will be talking about later today. We did an experimental release of inherited roles earlier, a few months ago, where it would only work for queries and query composition. We've now extended this to kind of work across mutations, remote schemas, actions. So this now allows you to start using inherited roles in production, along with conflict resolution, so that if you have conflicting rules, especially for things like mutations, you can override them and say, you know what, this inheritance is not going to work. Here is a conflict resolution. Here is the permission rule I want to use for this mutation. Template gallery, which we talked about, which Nicolas will be presenting today, which should be this particular release has support for being able to kind of create certain data models, certain practices in the way that you're using your database and generating the schema on top, or permissions that you should be able to start trying out. And over time, we'll be making this easier for you to also publish your own templates very, very easily. And then the GraphQL operation cost limit, which is also something that we're working on, which is very, very exciting. We talked a little bit about this last month, but for those of you folks who didn't catch it, this is an extremely interesting piece of work where we think about rate limiting for a GraphQL API, where you're not using something like an allow list, right? You're able to kind of specify a cost limit per operation per role that then allows Hasura to suspend execution if if a cost threshold is crossed, and also kill execution in the upstream system in the database, so that it's not just a connection timeout and the poor database is kind of off on its own trip trying to process this long running query and nothing's happening. And you still end up getting an inadvertent denial of service or having degraded quality of service. And then of course, the biggest thing that we've been working on, database joins and remote schema database joins. If Julian is on this call, I'm going to have to write Julian a little letter because I'd promised Julian that this would happen in July. But this looks like it might take another week or so. So that's stuff that we've talked about before that most of you, I think, are familiar with the ability to join across databases and the ability to join from your remote schemas, your GraphQL APIs back to your data models. And so these are things that you should be seeing PRs for, and you should be seeing merge commits pretty soon. All right, 2 new things that we're working on that I'm super excited about. The first is stored database queries in Hasura. So we'll be sharing an RFC soon. The idea here is that instead of having to create a view or a database function for a custom query, you'll now be able to just specify the SQL query in Hasura in the metadata itself or via the console. And you can then parameterize that. So what this will allow you to do is think of that SQL query that will still get exposed as a GraphQL model with relationships, with permissions, kind of all of the stuff that you expect, but you won't have to do any DDL against the database. So you won't have to do any migrations, which is nice. But you'll also, this also kind of paves the way for a pretty, some very interesting things. For example, if you have a read-only database and you don't have DDL ability there, this becomes really easy, right? So now you don't have to kind of modify the database to install a view or a function. Or for computed fields, right now you have to create a Postgres function, right, to enable a computed field. Now you won't have to do that. You can just specify the exact snippet of the SQL snippet, and you'll have a computed field there. What this is going to be particularly nice for is aggregations. So as you know, kind of Hasura does support aggregations in its GraphQL API, but the nature of GraphQL is not it's not very amenable to flexible aggregations, right? Because the way a GraphQL API works is that you kind of have this type definition of a model, and that's what you get, right? But when we think about aggregations, which are happening on demand, right? Like online aggregations that people want to do, the challenge there is that the type that you're returning is no longer the model's type, right? For example, if I have like, user ID and name, and for a weird reason, I'm running an aggregation query that says, tell me the number of users and the total length of all of the characters of the names of those users, which is, I don't know why you'd run that query, but suppose you were running that query. The problem is that the return type that you'll have is actually int, right? It's like count and sum, although the model type was ID and text, right? And so that makes certain advanced aggregations painful. And with this, what you'll be able to do is bang out your perfect SQL aggregation query, and that instantly turns into a GraphQL model. So that entire life cycle becomes super fast and super smooth. So that's kind of one thing we're working on. We'll have the spec out for you folks soon so that you can take a look at it, give us your comments and how you think about it. The second piece is webhook transformers. So this is a lightweight templating language. It's similar, inspired from like Go templates because it was one of the nicest, easiest templating languages. This is going to be something that we'll gradually make available across all of our anywhere where Hasura is connecting into an existing API or a hook, for example, actions or event triggers or cron triggers or scheduled events. And here, what you can do is that because whenever Hasura connects to an action or an event trigger, Hasura sends a payload in a particular format. So that means that if you want to integrate this with an existing REST API, which might be a GET API, which might have a GET method, right? Or which might take a JSON payload in a particular structure, you need to write that transformation step in the middle. This piece will now let you not have to write the transformation piece in the middle. You'll be able to transform the Hasura payload into your API's payload and the response also appropriately. And this is going to make a lot of those things easier. This is also going to be a really good fit with template gallery, because now we'll be able to kind of create templates for each other, where we'll be able to have these integrations with certain REST APIs or SaaS APIs just packaged as a little module, right? So you want to add in a Notion action or a Stripe action. That's just a thing now that you can add onto Hasura. So those are the new things that we're working on. Expect RFCs soon. But that's it for a quick update, a quick look into July, and a quick look into August and what we've been up to and what we are up to. And of course, if you have any questions, please do reach out on chat here, or of course, I'm always available on Twitter as well. But yeah, that's me. Back to you, Vish.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the update, Tanmai. I think Tanmai's updates are getting more and more power packed over the time. So, yeah, super exciting stuff. All right. So, for our first live demo, we have inherited roles enhancements. This feature has been an experimental feature, and ever since we've been really actively working on broadening the scope of the kind of use cases this feature covers. So, without further ado, let me call upon Karthikeyan to talk about it and give a live demo on the improvements.
I'm Karthikeyan. I work on on the server engineering team of Hasura, and so you might have heard me speaking on remote schema permission and the previous presentation of inherited roles, which only included the slip permission. So this is the second part of it, which I've been working on lately. It covers the inherited role improvements. Okay, so I'll be talking about it. Okay, so as users of inherited roles might know that inherited roles is currently only supported for select permissions, and you can't use it with mutations, remote schemas. Like we have Hasura supports a lot of type of permissions, but currently only select permissions are supported. And then we could create a inherited role only out of other non-inherited roles. So this was what we supported till now. So what are these improvements? So now inherited roles are supported for everything, like every type of permission Hasura supports, which are mutations, remote schemas, actions, custom functions, you name it, we have it. So if you're not happy, so this is one improvement. The second improvement is if you're not happy with the permission that's inherited by Hasura, which I uh, which I which I find very hard to believe, then you can override the permission with the custom permission you'd want, and then you can make inherited rows out of other inherited rows, which means that so before this feature you could only make inherited rows out of non-inherited rows, but now you can make inherited rows which can be a combination of non-inherited rows and inherited rows. Just that it should not be in a cycle. Yeah, so these are the improvements. Okay, so I'll be showing a demo now. The demo will be like of mutations, because okay, so we have two roles. I'm a manager employee, and I have an employee manager inherited role, and uh, and only a manager can insert a new row into the employee table. So uh, so nothing great, nothing special about it. Just some standard checks, like the manager ID should be equal to the ex Hasura manager ID session variable, and there are some and there's a preset. Let's add a preset. Okay, so now let me try to insert with this uh, with using the inherited rule. Okay, so I was able to insert this. Okay, now let's come to update. So I made a mistake. So the first name is actually Lisa with double A's, and I just added a single A. So I'll try to update this. Now I see that there's this red underline, which means that maybe this field is not available. Let me try to run it anyway. Okay, so it says that I'm getting an error, which means that the update permission was not able to inherit. So let's see why. So I have update permissions for both the manager employee roles. So the check for manager the manager is manager ID should be equal to the Hasura manager ID session variable, and for the employee, it is the ID should be Hasura user ID. So the check of the different update permissions of the manager and employee role are different. So this is what is a conflict. So when there is a conflict in the parent rows, the inherited role won't be able to inherit the permission. So in this case, the GraphQL engine marks this as inconsistent. So the update permission of the employees will be inconsistent. So this you can see it by. Okay, so this is. Okay, so you can see this here, that there's an inherited role permission inconsistency, and there'll be a message like what's the inconsistency. So you can see that could not inherit permission for the employee for the entity update permission for the employee table. Okay, so in this case, what do you do? Like when you have an inconsistency, what you can do is you can override it. So let me override it. So I have this employee manager role. So I'll set up permission. So let's have a check. Let's have a custom check that, let's say, and so ID should not be equal to Hasura user ID and manager ID should be equal to X. So a manager can only update their record if they are not, I mean, they should not be the employee. Then only basically a manager cannot update their own record. Okay, so they can just say first name, last name. Okay, some kind. Okay, now let's try the update. Okay, so okay, so I think the ID was 8. Okay, now it updated. Yeah, so yeah, that's all from my side. So I'm very sorry for the interruption. Yeah, so thank you, folks.
No worries, Karthik. You can never always please the demo gods and the internet gods at the same time. So your
Yeah.
demo was perfect. Thank you so much for it. Without further ado, let's move on to Vamshi's update on the enhancement that we've been working on with computed fields. Over to you, Vamshi.
So Tanmai gave a quick summary. The idea is that you can now use computed fields when specifying join conditions for remote schema joins, remote schema relationships, and similarly for a computed field in the GraphQL API, you can now use them in Boolean in where clauses and order by expressions, and in permissions too, wherever you're allowed to use Boolean expressions. And you can use computed fields, for example, like in all of the filter and check expressions that you define. So with remote joins, the kind of use cases that this would cover is if on the source end, the data is in a slightly different format than what is expected by the remote, you can do this sort of like transformation. And at the same time, if the data is not readily available as a column, but you need to like extract it using some JSON from a JSON payload, or maybe you'll have to like compute it on the fly, then like these use cases are covered by this. So I'm going to quickly give you a demo. So I have a simple GraphQL engine. So I have a simple table called state, which stores a country code and the name. The country code is stored in lowercase here. And I have there's a public remote schema, which like gives you country detail with the country code, except it accepts in uppercase. And if I define, so this is what I have. So I have, that should come later, right? So this is what I start with. So I have, I track the table state. I define a remote relationship using the country code that's already present in my database to this particular remote schema. And let me quickly apply this metadata. Okay, I haven't created that table. All right, so let me make this simple GraphQL query. You'll see that you can't get the data from the remote schema. I'm gonna create a computed field now. And in the computed field, the data is converted to uppercase. I'm gonna create this thing. And this is the new metadata. So where I have a computed field and I use the computed field in the remote schema definition. So now I'm gonna apply this again. And let me make the same query. You can now see that it fetches the data correctly. All right, let me switch to the next one. So you can now use computed fields in the GraphQL API, order by expressions, and the Boolean expressions. Obviously, you have a better API now. And at the same time, if you make any changes to your data model, given that a computed fields schema is as close to a column as possible, you can now, let's say, split a column into like 2 different columns and create a computed field which mimics the behavior of the older column. So that way your older clients still continue to function with the older API. So let me give you a quick demo. So I have now a sample database, and there's this particular table which has a couple of columns, except the total cost and the quantity of an item is stored. What I would like to see is a per item cost, and this particular computed field cost, that is a simple division expression. I'm going to create this, and I'm going to look at the metadata for this. Right, so just a simple configuration of the database, a table and a computed field. I'm going to apply this. Okay, you can see that this particular query now uses cost per item, which is a computed field in the ordering, and it uses it also in the Boolean expressions. So if I make this query and if I click analyze, you can see that because it's an expression, Postgres has to do a sequential scan to fetch the data. We can, given that Postgres supports expression indexes, we should be able to like do better. So what I'm doing is creating an expression index on this particular table, and the expression being the exact same expression that I used in my computed field definition. I'm gonna create this index, let Postgres update its statistics. I'm gonna go back. So you can see that the cost is about 4,000 units. So again, hit analyze. You can see that the cost has come down. So the SQL that we generate for these computed fields is simple enough that Postgres can see through that expression and use the expression index where possible. And the final one is permissions. The use cases here are like, obviously you can now specify a much broader range of conditions at GraphQL engine layer. And also if you have like complex permissions and you do not want to configure that for every table and like using relationships, you can just add a computed field and which abstracts out all of this complex condition checking and use that directly in your permissions. So let me again take you over a quick demo. So a simple table, except the information of the information that's required to enforce permission is stored in a JSON blob as follows. It has a user and an editor key. And I've created a computed field which extracts this user ID out of that JSON blob. Let me show you the metadata for this. So the metadata, so the computed field is called user. No, I'm using the user column directly in the permissions. Let me quickly reset the database. And all right, okay, I haven't created this schema. All right, so I am gonna query this as a particular role user with user ID 1, I should be able to see the data. But if I query it as particular user 2, it should be empty because this computed field would extract the user information from resource owners and would apply the filter. All right, folks, that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, leave them in chat and I'll try my best to answer them.
Thank you so much, Vamshi. That was a great demo. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into the security features that Vijay will be taking us through. We will be seeing console support for two new features, namely node limit and disabling GraphQL introspection per role. And we have another really cool update on the console, which is the security API securities controls tab. So let's take a look at it. Vijay, if you're ready.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Vish. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and I hope you folks can hear me well. Yeah. Let me jump into my presentation. So yeah, we're glad to announce that we'll be providing console support for the API limits and GraphQL introspection on cloud and the enterprise product. So a couple of community calls back, Thiru spoke about that the Hasura engine will be supporting a few security settings. So what I'm going to show you here is how you can toggle those settings and set the values for those things via the console. Yeah, so what I have here is a simple Chinook database setup with a couple of roles set up. You can see role 1, role 2, and role 3, just to kind of demonstrate how it's going to look up, how you're going to see it in the security tab. So you can find the security tab now in the console along with the REST and the GraphQL tabs. So once you click on security settings, you should be able to see the newly added API limits and the introspection. So let's take a look at the API limits and how you can configure them via the console. So you're going to start off with a very, it's going to start off the metadata with no settings involved in the first place, but you can go ahead and set the global settings. Every instance of the security setting needs to have some kind of a global limit enabled in the first place so that the Hasura engine knows what to fall back on in case you delete the per role settings. So I'm going to just go ahead and save a couple of values here. And yeah, once I do that, if I go and toggle the metadata, and I can see that the metadata is now set with the given API settings, API limit settings. So for the global, it's set to 10, and it's global set to 10 for node limit, as well as the rate limit is set properly. So what I can do now is I can go ahead and set security settings for per role basis as well. So we noticed that there were 3 roles that were earlier set in the system. So we can give it custom limits. Let's say I want to have node limit as 15 for role 1. I can go ahead and save that, and that should be pretty much reflected in the system, and you can see it via the metadata API as well. So what happens for other roles is that when you don't specify a setting for a given role, it's going to fall back to the global value. So that's why we set the global value in the first place. Yeah, so that's pretty much what we can expect from node and depth limit. And just to give new users who are not familiar with what node and depth limit is, depth limit determines how deep you can nest your query. So this is a quick diagram to show how to count the depth limit on a given query. And node limit determines how many selection sets your GraphQL query can have. So in this example, I have 4 selection sets, which are basically 4 nodes in the GraphQL query. So that's basically the node limit and depth limit. And the same applies for request limits as well. The thing with request limit is that we will be we support additional unique parameters as well. When you don't save it with a unique parameter enabled, it's going to do it based on a role name. But just for the sake of granularity, you can set it to a particular IP address, or you can set it to some Hasura session variable like Hasura ID or something like that, and you can go ahead and save that. So for that particular user role, it's going to use that as an extra parameter for checking rate limits. Also, in addition to all of this, we have a setting that will allow you to preserve the metadata state. It's going to have all the API limit security settings in the metadata, but you can globally turn it off or turn it on by selecting this option. So once I select this, it's going to be disabled, and you can save the metadata. It's going to be globally disabled. None of the security settings is going to hold true, but you still have the settings preserved in the metadata, and you can just turn it on, based on your convenience. The next setting that we have here is the schema introspection. By default, all the roles in the system are going to have the schema introspection enabled, but for certain user roles, you might not want to enable the schema introspection. So in that cases, you can just go ahead and, okay, yeah, you can just go ahead and turn off the setting, and you should be not, when you like toggle to the right, you should say that, okay, yeah, it should say that introspection is disabled for global role 3. So yeah, that's basically whatever I wanted to cover. If you guys have any questions, you can, drop them in the chat and I'll try my best to answer them. Yeah. Over to you, Krish.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vijay. That was a great demo. Now we have Naveen with a demo on query tags. Query tags are basically comments that are attached to your SQL statements that help you get a bit of application context. What you can do with that is analyze performance directly in the database, and Naveen will help us learn how we can do that. Over to you, Naveen.
Yep. Hey folks, I'm Naveen and I work with the server engineering team. And today I'll be talking to you about this new feature called as query tags. So what are query tags? To understand query tags, let's take a higher level overview of what Hasura actually does when it gets a GraphQL operation. Say we have a GraphQL operation, get wizards, which basically gets all the name of the wizards, and then we pass it to Hasura. What Hasura does is it converts this GraphQL operation into an SQL statement. But with this feature, we also add an extra SQL comment to the generated SQLs, which will help us give some information of the actual GraphQL operation. For example, here, when the generated SQL is select star from wizards, right? But at the same time, we also added the root field name, which was wizards, as you can see here, and the operation name get wizards. So it should help us correlate with the actual GraphQL operation. So let me just take to you and explain to you why do we actually need it. So let's assume in my well-crafted drawing that I have an Hasura app and it's connected to a database. And since we do not live in an ideal world, I also have initialized my PG analyze. Okay, yeah, I've also added a PG analyze. PG analyze is nothing but a native Postgres monitoring tool, which will help us give deep insights to the Postgres logs. So once I have set all this up with my Hasura, which is connected to database, and PG analyze and analyze monitoring the database logs, I release my app to the universe. Now, everyone from the computer to the alien might be using my app. So what happens? Assume that a user is trying to execute a query. He goes here and he tries to execute a query, but he sees that this query is taking a very long time. And he comes to me and say, "Hey, human, what are you actually doing? My query is going slow. Fix it. Fix it quickly." And I, being a really responsible engineer, I try to figure it out. What can I do? So the first step would be that since I have already added my PG analyze to the database, it should have caught the slow queries, right? So I go to the PG analyze tab. Yep, and I go to my PG Analyze tab and I see that it did catch some queries which are taking some average time of 8 milliseconds. And so I click on this tab and I see that all I get is a very big SQL statement. And if I have to figure out what is this loop, what is the actual GraphQL query which got executed, this SQL statement is not going to help us at all. But that is where the query tags come in. If you see here, we did already add a SQL comment which would help us at least fish out or finalize the actual GraphQL operation which was executed to here. So if you can see here, the query tags, or let me just, for a better view, let me just click on the query tags tab. So if you can see here, it did capture some query tags which says that operation name was my query, the field name or the root field name was get article sleep, and it also gave us this parameters query hash. So these three information should be enough for us to actually figure out what was the actual graph query, what was the actual GraphQL operation which was executed to get this SQL statement. Folks, so that's is the demo of query tags. So a very too long don't read of this query tags would be that query tags nothing but a simple SQL comment which we add to the generated SQL statement. And the benefit of having query tags is it will help us to end-to-end tracing of our GraphQL operation and also do performance analysis. So folks, if you have any more questions, do check out the feature and give us feedback. And if you need more information, we also have docs regarding query tags inside the Hasura Cloud and query tags tabs. So it's a very well documented feature. So do check it out. Yep, that's my demo.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your demo, Naveen. It wasn't just a very, very good 10 on 10 diagram, but also a very, very good demo. So super excited about query tags. You folks should check it out. We are also working on a really cool guide, tutorial style guide on query tags that can help you understand what this feature is and how you can use it for end-to-end tracing and performance analysis from your dashboard. All right, so moving on to the next demo, which is Template Gallery by Nicolas. Over to you, Nicolas.
Thanks. So you should be able to see my screen now.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to be talking about Template Gallery. And for those who don't know, it's a new utility for running Hasura. And like Tanmai say, could be in the future to help you plug multiple services like Notion or Stripe or anything with the new features that will come down the way. I wanted to do a shout out to the team that worked really hard on it, and Martin and Varun worked really, really hard, and the rest of the console team. So what it is, what is it? It's a utility that answered how can I experiment with Hasura? Like how can I experiment with permissions, relationships, enums, computed files, and any other new feature we can have. How can I get the most of my database and have example for triggers, functions, extensions, and this kind of stuff without having to go through a whole documentation and just you can try a thing. And how do we try a thing? Well, now we can go to the schema, to the database we want to do, and we have the new view with the template gallery. And we have like a lot of templates. Those are open source, so if you want to look at them, you can. And we're gonna work with two examples today. We're gonna look at the one-to-many, which is an example with an article and its author, and we can have a small description about what like it is. And we have the whole SQL statement that will be run. And like I said, it's open source, so like if you want to view it on GitHub, we can view the actual SQL here and the metadata if like we want. And so we can install it to try. So if we install the template, we see a new schema popped up here, and there is an article with values in it and authors. Yeah. And so like in the API, we can look at we can already go through them and see, yes, we can see the data, it's already there. But this one was a simple one. It was only database and values in it. What about extensions? Like for example, what about fuzzy match? And so like the template will install the extension, the functions, and track it with all the Hasura magic behind it. And in the data, we can see we have a directory with companies, department, and names. And we can, let me copy the query, do a fuzzy search on them. Like I search for Yaha, and Yahoo was out, and Yahin because it was close. And that's about it for like what is template gallery. Soon you will be able to go here and want to have the link to how you can contribute to it. So it's still a work in progress. We should be able to have a spec down the next week or so. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them on the chat. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. That was an amazing demo on an amazing feature. Template Gallery would be obviously very cool to use. Especially, I'm really excited for the for what the community contributes to the template gallery. So looking forward to that. Next, we have the Hasura CLI ARM release that Vishnu will be talking about. Over to you, Vishnu.
Hey all, I'm Vishnu. I work as an engineer at Hasura. I mostly work on the Hasura CLI and internal tooling. So I'm here to give you a small update on our ARM release. So the first update that I have is we recently released the ARM64 support for Hasura CLI. It's available from V 2.0.2 onwards, which means that you can use the native CLI binaries in your Apple M1 Macs and Linux ARM64 machines. Let's quickly see a small demo of it. I'm going to use a AWS machine that runs on ARM64 architecture. So as you could see, this is the ARM64 machine. You can, whatever we are doing here, you can try it out in your Apple M1 Max too. So first let's try initializing a Hasura CLI project and updating, like exporting metadata from a Hasura GraphQL engine. The sad story is we don't have server support for ARM64 yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Hasura Cloud, and I already spinned up an instance for us, GraphQL engine, and this is a very small, very like basic instance where I just have one table called users. We'll try to export the metadata for this. So let's go ahead. And I already installed the Hasura CLI here. It's if you would like to install it, it's same. You can find the docs for it here. It's same as how you would install in other operating systems and architectures. So what I'm going to do is let's do a Hasura init and let's get the endpoint from here. So I'm going to just say checking. Yeah, so I'm going to git init so that you can see the difference of what gets added in our demo. Cool. Cool. So we have the basic thing up now. So in order to do a metadata export, the thing is our GraphQL engine is protected by our admin secret right now. So we need to set the admin secrets. So let's set the env for it. Copy it. Cool. So let's do metadata export. Cool. The export succeeded. Let's add everything. So if you could see, like, you can find the users table here. Whatever was present in the GraphQL engine got exported in our ARM64 machine. That's the demo I had. Apart from that, I had two updates. We secretly sneaked in a little flag called CLI ext path. This is going to be useful if you are trying to build Hasura CLI for your for architecture and OS that's not supported yet. Yeah, if you are trying to do something like that, feel free to drop in our Discord channel and get help from us. So after that, about the server, we know that a lot of people are very excited about having GraphQL engine image run on ARM64 machines like the Mac M1 Mac. So we are very aware of this, and we are already in the research phase of what needs to happen for getting this out. So once we have an update, we'll probably update these through threads. Cool. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vishnu. That was a really cool update. I am dropping a link to the docs that you can use to install the CLI, and you can follow the instructions to use it on your ARM machine. So feel free to check that out. And if you have any questions for Vishnu, you can drop them in the chat. Also, moving ahead, we have our final demo from our engineering team by Priya. Priya will be talking about the GitHub integration on Hasura Cloud.
Yeah. So hi, I'm Priya. I work with Hasura Cloud team at Hasura, and yeah, I'm gonna show a quick demo about GitHub integration. So what we can do with this is basically with any Git repo, we can connect to the Hasura Cloud project, and all the migration and metadata will be getting deployed automatically. So we can do is create a new project. I already have a project in here. We can go to the Git deployment and we can sign in with GitHub. This is based on every project. Um, yeah, I'm selecting a particular repo. After that, there will be option available to add a repo. So I'm selecting this repo, and the branch, whichever branch you want to deploy, could be listed. And my Hasura is present in the demo directory, and we have two deployment modes. So first one is automatic, where whenever you're committing anything on GitHub, it will be picked up and get deployed automatically. In manual, we need to come back in here and deploy whenever we wish to. So yes, so this is my Hasura. So as you can see, I do not have anything available. I have a small schema for library. I'll push that now. So as you can see in here, our deployment has started, and we can go and check the logs. So first we fetch our metadata and migration, then you can see the logs in here, and then we apply the migration, and then you can see the metadata, and then we apply the migration which has been applied, and then we reload the value. So now if I launch the console, yeah, you can see the schema in here, which so just an ID. We do have an early access for this. Early access has been given to the people who has asked, and this would be released next week for every project. Yeah, that's all from my end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Priya. That was a great demo. So with the GitHub integration, you can now deploy your local migrations to staging and production with a simple Git push. So that's definitely a powerful feature that we're super excited about. And as Priya mentioned, everyone who has asked for an early access, we'll be providing them, we'll be enabling GitHub integration to them today, and everyone else will be getting it by next week. All right, folks. So we are ready to wrap up with one last demo, which is the community demo by Nick. So without wasting much time, let's get right into it. Nick, whenever you're ready.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks so much, Vish, and thanks for the Hasura team. It was really great to see all those demos. I appreciate your time. I'll be pretty brief. But as a quick introduction, my name is Nick Amoscato. I'm a software engineer at FieldGuide. And I'm going to be demoing a GitHub action that we open sourced that really facilitates Hasura metadata changes, and in particular permissions. So I'll give a quick demo of that. Before I do, just a little bit of context into some of the issues that we were having using Hasura, and a little bit about FieldGuide. So we are building a complex security and financial audit platform to help auditing firms with audits that they're running. And We're a seed stage company that was around since 2020, have been using Hasura since the beginning. And over the past years, you can imagine any healthy Hasura project grows. We have, over 100 tables across several user roles. And yeah, last time I checked, our tables YAML, got pretty big. It's over like 15,000 lines. And it doesn't really affect development for the engineer working on these changes. Obviously, you're mostly interacting with the console, but we haven't been running into issues with just like the changes from the reviewer's perspective, basically losing some of that context in the YAML. So I'm sure you all have faced similar GitHub PRs with 1,000 lines of YAML configuration changes, and this is really what the GitHub action sort of tries to solve for. So what I will do is pop over here. I have an example PR. I'm not gonna click through the console, but I do have some changes that are staged via this timely Olympic themed data model. So just to briefly talk through that, I have an event with athletes that can participate in events. Athletes belong to initially a single team, and then there's a coach for each team. So this is a classic data model change in which we made a decision initially where an athlete can only belong to one team, but we want to make a one-to-many change in that we had a join table such that an athlete can belong to more than one team. And then the thing to note, there's several user roles that are involved, but the thing that we'll focus on is the coach role in particular. So a coach, obviously a coach is the coach of a specific team. And with regards to some of the tables, most of their permissions and whatnot flow through that coach team relationship. So for example, a coach only has access to view athletes that are associated with their team. So I'm going to open this pull request. We will struggle reading through some of this YAML, but I'll be kind of brief on this front. But you can see some of this is pretty expected. So this is the athlete table where that core data model changed. We see that the previous single object relationship for team now changes to a one-to-many, an array relationship. And then as we scroll down, we can see probably some expected patterns of permission changes where we have team now goes through that join table, but everything else looks pretty similar. This is the new join table, which is easy to read because all of that context is sort of in here. But even in this small PR, it's basically hard to understand. Okay, we know there's just a permission change, but what type of permission change is it? And in particular, what role does it apply to? You sort of get lost in this context, right? Clicking through some of these arrows. So I have the GitHub action wired up on this example project. And if I go back here, we can see kind of a glimpse as to what this does sort of in its current state. And really that is, it notes what tables are new that were tracked, any tables that were updated, and then I don't have any in this example, but any tables that were deleted or untracked from the metadata. And then in particular, if there were any permission changes that were associated with those tables, we can see a similar table layout to what you would see in the console where the rows are associated with each user role, and then the columns are your sort of operations. The icons I do want to point out are different though. So this is really descriptive of the change itself. So a plus denotes that permissions were added. So select permissions were added, and then plus minus updated, minus deleted, etc. So what's nice is at a glimpse, you can sort of get a visual layout, if you will, of the changes in this PR. So there's a couple different ways to use it. We have the ability to deep link tables into the console if you have a review or preview app or something, which is nice. You're able to view permissions sort of in there. Alternatively, we've done sort of a side-by-side thing where you can have the YAML on the right, this thing as sort of your table of contents. Such that as you're reviewing some of the YAML, you can just basically kind of run through this as your sort of guide, if you will, in terms of what changed. So It will also show, this is just in the README of the GitHub action, but to wire this up, it's pretty simple. We're not actually implementing the like comment posting functionality. There's a bunch of GitHub actions that do that. So this is one of the ones that we found. But in terms of configuring this, you really just need a GitHub token, and then you can optionally provide some defaults if your directory structure is different. So that was the quick demo. In terms of things that we're working on in the future, we did start some work on adding support for config v3. And I do want to call out like kudos to the Hasura team for splitting up the monster tables YAML into separate files. That's like certainly going to be helpful. And I think it'll be even more helpful to have this like guide with it. So we're definitely working on that. Always looking for ways to enhance the way that we're displaying summaries. Whether it's like surfacing more changes. Right now, it's really just scoped to any tables changes and then any table permission changes, but things like column updates, et cetera, whatever is going to help that reviewer gain some like context and more easily review some of these changes. We're also open to considering additional output formats. Right now, we only output HTML, which is useful if you want to just like post like a GitHub like comment or something like that. But I did want to call out that like the diffing stage itself is decoupled from like formatting, so it's certainly extensible in that respect. If you have any other ideas for different output formats. And then finally, this might be outside the scope of this particular GitHub action, but even in that simple example we walked through, we've sort of started thinking about, okay, well, we have like for all these tables, different like patterns of permissions, right? So are there ways to figure out, okay, when you're making some data model change or something, can we easily identify the set of tables that should be updated? And then moreover, like the changes that we make from a permission perspective, like are those indeed correct? So that might be outside the scope of the GitHub action, but along the lines of sort of like changes that you'll commonly see when introducing like data model changes, et cetera. So that's all I got. My contact information's on the slide. Admittedly, I'm not on the Discord that much, but my handle is there for Twitter and GitHub. So feel free to reach out there. It'd be a missed opportunity if I didn't mention that Field Guide is, of course, hiring. So I did want to throw a shameless plug there. And then my email's there as well. Feel free to check out more about like the company itself at fieldguide.io. But most importantly, if you hit up the GitHub Marketplace, you can just search for Hasura change summary and check out the GitHub action, and hopefully it'll help you guys out. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was a really cool project, and it was super exciting to see how you folks are using it at Field Guide. So it was really nice to see all the features, and also really looking forward to everything that's on the future scope. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us and sharing it with us. Now, real quick, I would love to share a couple of internal things that are happening that we'd like to share with you folks. So some community updates. We recently announced the Hasura Super App. So in case you missed it, we get asked a lot about what kind of applications can you build using Hasura, and our answer was Hasura Super App. It's a reference application that shows you how to leverage the power of the core Hasura features to build scalable, secure, and high-performing business applications. So these are not just simple applications, but these are actual applications in the real-world scenario with complex business logic. So the Hasura Super App is the one if you want to learn how to use Hasura's core features to build these kind of applications. The Hasura Super App is the thing for you. You can go to hasura.io/reference app, and this is something that we've put together where you can just git the code, which is explore the code on GitHub and learn about the core Hasura features that we've talked about. Next up is a few really cool Learn tutorials. So our Learn series is a series of tutorials on GraphQL and database related tutorials that guides that we've put together for developers to get up and running with up to speed with GraphQL with their preferred stack. So we talked to a few developers who are using GraphQL, especially Hasura, and we asked them what's the one resource that they'd like to have, and the answer was the Postgres course that we worked on. So do feel free to check that out. We also have 2 really cool resources, which is the Rescript and the Svelte course that we worked with someone from the community. Shout out to Kiran for designing these courses. So please check them out. And we also have another really cool announcement. We recently launched the Hasura Data and API show. And I'm super excited because I'm also a part of it. So we have 4 episodes as part of the Data and API show. We're already done with the 2 of them. Praveen talked about the raw data Hasura, React admin, how to use React admin to build interfaces with Hasura. And type safety with Rescript and GraphQL, where I talked to Kiran about the recent course that we launched. And there are 2 upcoming episodes that you can check out and stay tuned for, which is the episode that Gavin is going to host about the Hasura Super App and how they built it, why they built it, and how you can use it. And also Adrian is going to host the SQL Server live stream to tinker with SQL Server using Hasura. So yeah, the link will be sent to you. And finally, we have a really cool webinar happening super soon, which is a hands-on demo and guide to Hasura's authorization model for your GraphQL APIs. Sorry, I haven't added a date here, so let me take you quickly to the website. Sorry, this is not the right. Anyways, I will send you you will be getting the link in the emails. We're running a bit short on time, so I'll zip through this. But yeah, feel free to please make sure that you visit our website, the events page, to check out the upcoming webinar, which is on a hands-on demo and guide to Hasura's authorization model for your GraphQL APIs. And lastly, the next community call is happening on 26th of August. So please join us if you'd like to hear some more updates and product launches and features that we're working on. And we're always working on making the community call better. So we'd love to hear your feedback. You can leave us any kind of feedback that you have through our form, hasura.com. And we'd love to see what you would like to see in the next call. And if you are building something with Hasura, or you're building something for the Hasura community using Hasura, we'd love to hear from you through our community call demo form. So if you'd like to join our upcoming community call, just like Nick, and showcase your project, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you, folks, for joining this month's community call. One side effect of having a lot of cool stuff that you're working on is the shortage of time. So thank you so much for everyone who had patience and who tuned in and listened to us talk about our features. We also have a really cool guide, which is the July roundup of Hasura's product launches. This is basically a roundup of everything that we just talked about and announced in this community call, and it has all the links to the documentation plus description to the things that the features that we've just launched. Thank you so much, folks, for joining us. See you around next time.